This is the first of two videos on abstract drawing. This one is an exploration of black and white techniques. The second is an actual application of those concepts with a live demonstration. And please be mindful that there are as many approaches to drawing as there are artists, so this isn't a prescription. It's just about sharing some ideas that may prove useful for you as an artist or interesting if you enjoy studying works of art. I think this is a good way to summarize the basic thought process when drawing. A circle is just that, a circle, or it could be a 0 if it has a 2 or a 3 next to it. It only takes on greater meaning if it's in context, and that can be very simple. Adding a line gives it context. Adding local tone gives it context. And adding some sort of background gives it greater context. The additional layer, of course, is shading, both on the main areas of interest or around them. And we'll look at that later because shading can be just as relevant to abstraction as to tonal realism. So if you want your drawing to feel close and intimate, then lots of dark areas will create that feeling. But if you want spaciousness, then that will be achieved with lots of grey tones and whites, with a very few dark areas to help maintain the full range of tones. My drawings tend to be close and dense. I like to interweave shapes, and that's my style. And if that suits your style, you might find it helpful. So the purpose of this video is to show examples of several different approaches so you can adapt the demonstration to your own requirements. So allow me to compare my style with that of the late 20th century abstract, surreal, expressionist artist Chilean-born Roberto Matta. Not because I'm putting myself in the same category as this wonderful artist, but because his style suits my purposes for this video. I'll share 3 of my abstract charcoal drawings first, then we'll see how Matta used line and tone in his work. And I recommend charcoal pencils or compressed charcoal for black and white drawing because it gives you a huge variety of options, both in terms of shading and in texture, as you'll see. The first image is from my drawing book. It's roughly A4 in size, so not very large. This one is to demonstrate how tone translates to colour and how well-chosen tonal values made the choice of colours relatively easy. So we have the white areas here, 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 and we have very black areas here. So we've got the full range from black to white. And then the mid-tones are the most interesting shapes, which you'll see turn out to be these. They're textured and they have shade. They're shadowed, so they have a voluminous, it has a voluminous effect. Here there's not so much shadow, but you'll see in the painting that those are all roughly the same color where those textures are. And then the upper mid-tones and lower mid-tones are not textured, they're more blended colors. I actually use a brush to create this effect. So if we look at how it translates into color, obviously the black areas are black and the white areas are at their lightest white, but they're just going into a bit of shadow here, so it's pushing this forward. This one has a bit of shadow here and here, it's pushing this area forward. This oval shape has a shadow beneath it, and this one's just plain white. And then of the midtones, I've actually used the colours to define the spaces. But you can see the interweaving of shapes. This is what is creating depth in this particular image. When you begin a free-form drawing, you have basically 4 choices of mark making: curved lines, straight lines, shapes, or tonal areas. I don't recommend beginning with straight lines unless you're creating a geometric pattern because they tend to divide the canvas into sections unless they're very short lines. If you place tonal areas early on, then you can't pull them back to white again. So it's a good idea to begin with large gestural curves or small shapes which will remain white throughout. Then you have a choice of working tonal areas in behind them, darkening them with each layer, or strategically placing black areas around so you have the full tonal range right from the start. This drawing is charcoal pencil and compressed charcoal on a 60 by 80 sheet of cartridge paper. It's impossible to share the whole process with you in retrospect, but it's clear that the first shapes were a combination of large gestural curves and round or oval shapes, which were probably left untouched until later on. But in close-up, they're clearly spheroid just by adding local shaded areas here and here. They're underneath, so the light source is from above. Around them are a variety of tonal areas built up section by section, and although other white areas are present, they don't connect directly to the spheres. You don't want two white areas together. You have to separate them with a line, but there's no definition in terms of depth of field. This small trapezoid shape evolved between two parallel lines created later in the process, and again, it's surrounded by grey tones. If you come back looking at this trapezoid, you can see that there's a straight line being added after the curved shape, because here it continues down this way. Another line was added here. And even though some of the lines are quite long, none of them go the length of the paper. There's one here, it's relatively short. There's one that starts up here, and it comes down, and it doesn't appear again until down here, where it fits under the curved shape. There's one across here. Again, it stops here and doesn't continue anywhere. And if we look up at the grander gestures, we have this curved shape here, which has been doubled to create a three-dimensional effect. It's shaded underneath as well, so it has volume. And then beneath it are two more gestural shapes. Now, they would have been single lines originally, but they've been thickened up, and this one comes up under here. But it also continues under this bulky shape so that it's pushing it forward. And this one, which appears to run in tandem with it, actually, when it gets to here, runs a little bit in front. So you have three layers. You've got this darker color in front, the curve. You've got this voluminous curve here, and you have that black area behind. And then they're surrounded by a variety of tones to contrast. So it's building up depth. And looking back again, here's this curved shape. It actually continues up here. It may have been continued later because it's not running through here. We have this curved shape running up here. And we have one that sort of tucks in between those spheroids. And there's another one here. There are quite a few of them, and they all hold it together. The approach to this drawing is somewhat different. There are no grand gestures, there are no straight lines. Rather than an interweaving of shapes, it's simply a layering process from small white statements like this bird's wing shape that's here and continued throughout, through many subtle changes of grey in here. You can see lots of patterning and very small black areas where there appears to be no light, and that throws everything forwards. The shapes are less random than the first drawing and fairly consistent overall. And there's an area over here to the right which is black shapes on a white background. Here you see it in close-up, that the black was added over the white, which may have been a shape I created, or it may have just formed by putting tonal areas in behind. It doesn't matter how. And in the interests of what's called rhythmic unity, it's been repeated in other areas. Here we see a wing shape, and we have darker areas on white. They're not black, but they're grey. Over here, we have it in the negative. We have white areas over grey, and down here is another little section. Rhythmic unity is a term used to describe repeated shapes or colours which helped to unite the image as a whole. If there'd been a single area where this pattern was created, it would have looked out of place. But when you come back to the complete picture, it's obvious how it creates areas of interest without competing with the dominant wing-like shapes. In this bird here, this bird, this shape here, and then all these leaf shapes are also picking up that wing of this central bird. It's all adding to the rhythmic unity of the piece. You can see the whole thing seems to work. It works as a whole. Now let's look at what matter does with line, tone, and form. His black and white drawings are quite linear and not helpful here, but the paintings are. They're rather like coloured linear and also tonal drawings when converted to black and white, which work to me just as well as the colour images because the tonal relationships are so compelling. So here's this image in black and white, and it's quite interesting because it's really a drawing, but with areas of tone, and you might wonder how to create that tonal effect in charcoal, especially the area to the top left, which we'll look at in a moment. These lantern shapes are obviously created using light brush strokes of colour, but the solution in charcoal is simple. Use a brush, just as he did, but dipped in dark charcoal powder. That's created simply by rubbing dark charcoal or compressed charcoal on a spare piece of paper and dip the brush in it. The lanterns appear transparent because the tonal areas and black lines run through them. That section at the top left is achieved in the same way, charcoal brush strokes, leaving patches of white and creating different layerings of the charcoal, and then adding small, really dark areas in black. Quite an interesting effect, I think. That section at the top left, you can see now. The two spirals to the right are quite interesting, but I'm not convinced about the two very black shapes, which don't seem to work well in either the original painting or in black and white, but that was his choice, obviously. What I see in all Matter's work is that he's not concerned about form and rhythmic unity. He appears to have worked entirely intuitively, which is very different to the way I work and why I chose to compare his work with mine. Here's another one. It looks very complex, but in black and white, it is easier to make sense of it. This one is quite geometric in the central area with converging straight lines to the right and to the center left. And those create an horizon. When you have converging lines, it's a perfectly good way to create a sense of an horizon. There's blocks of various tones, and to the top right, the dense area of brushstrokes again, as in the other painting drawing. What prevents this area from looking overly chaotic are those converging lines in front of it. They push it backwards towards the imagined horizon line so it doesn't dominate the whole image. And then there's this one, it's called separation, and you can see why. There's the two figures, and the one on the right has its arm facing outwards as if to push the figure on the left away. So how is this in black and white? It's essentially very simple. The whole background is a very pale tone, not quite white. The only pure white areas are the arms of the figures and what are obviously female parts of the right figure's anatomy. I can't say the word, it might create a problem. Everything else is drawing. The thin lines are black, the thicker lines are brushstrokes. And this is what helps to create depth and space in this one, as you can see. The right arm is reaching through some kind of screen, the frame of which is in front of it on the right and behind it on the left, giving some perspective. And there are some lines that pass in front of the arm and some running behind it. That might be really obvious to you, but it's surprising how many workshop participants can't envisage how that works when they don't have a physical object in front of them for guidance. There's not much more to say about this one, but it may give you some ideas for your own work. So thank you for joining me. Happy drawing.